Jewel Hellman, welcome to Adultish Wines.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. I love that you have wine. How authentic.
Yes, of course. That's just kind of how it started, just like chatting over some wine, hanging out, nothing too official, just kind of chill vibes. Are you
I
drinking
love it.
anything? Alcoholic, non-alcoholic?
I love it. I don't drink, and I left my water downstairs in the midst of trying to figure out my camera lens, so I'm already prepared for my wine of the week, but
That's okay. Oh my god, I'll be able to identify with that for sure. I love your background. It's so bright and friendly and
Thank
fun.
you. Thank you so much. I want it to be. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so you are a social relationships expert with a degree in psychology, right? And pending master's in social work.
Yes.
Can you just give me just like high level what the heck is that?
A social relationships expert? Yeah. So I have spent the past 5 years studying all things like friendship, what makes people connect. And I got into this through really struggling my entire life as a socially anxious extrovert, but not realizing that that's what I had because I was like pretty extroverted for the most part. But I
Okay.
had a lot of social anxiety. I overthought so much. And people kept telling me over and over again, like, it'll just get better as you get older. Now I know I look young. I'm also in, like, my, like, coziest outfit right now, so I look
Good, perfect. That's you
even
dressed
younger.
appropriately.
So I look even younger, but I'm close to 30, and so when people kept telling me, "Hey, this is just gonna get better as you get older," and it wasn't, I was like, "What the heck is going on?" And then I started experiencing what is so, so, so common, so normal, and it's when people graduate college and they experience the friendship dip, where their friends start pairing off, start moving, start having kids, start having, like all different
Yeah.
things. And so we go from spending so much time with our peers to like not at all. And Paige, I was just like, this was years ago at this point, but I was like, I have spent my entire life feeling anxious, overthinking everything I say and do, and not really having the meaningful friends that I want. So, just from then, and this is before the pandemic, I started looking into this and studying this. I have a background, I have experience in psychological research, so I
Okay.
was like, "Okay, I know how to read this. I'm, like,
Yeah, because if
scientifically
I wanted to
literate."
look up, like, why I didn't have friends or why I was feeling sad about not having friends, I would have no idea where to start,
Yeah.
so that makes sense that you have a background in that.
Yeah, and so I just started looking at it for me, myself, and I, and then people kept coming up to me, and again, I was always pretty extroverted, but people were like, "Jewel, your energy is so different. Like, what's different about you?" And then when I created, like, I always tell people, like, truly the friend group of my dreams, and people were like, "How did you do this? Like, as an adult? Like, I wanna
Mhm.
join your girls' trips." And I knew at that point that this is what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing. And so that was, 5 years and some change ago, and I just, for fun, started mentoring people and telling people what I was learning about confidence, about connection, and literally later that year, the pandemic hit, and later that year, I was full-time just coaching and mentoring people on these topics, and I've been doing that ever since, so that's what it
What
means.
a what a niche like, you would think it's a niche thing, but, like,
Mhm.
everyone either has a friend or doesn't have a friend or had a friend,
Mhm.
falling out or and what you said about the college thing, I was fortunate enough, so I didn't go to real college. I went to fashion school and I still lived in my hometown, and so we all kind of still stuck around, and I lived with, my roommates who were my friends at the time as well, so but I can totally see, like, I'm even thinking about my niece who is in her 2nd year of college right now and, having to move away from her best, 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 best friends that she thinks she'll ever have, which I hope so, they're so amazing and cute, and I love them, but I'm also like, but you meet new people but it's hard.
Mhm. Yeah. It's
So you found, like you just from personal experience, you were like, "Okay, I'm gonna fix this." What was your job, your occupation, like, when you started kind of researching this?
Yeah. Well, at the time, I had just gotten home from well, okay. At the time, I was working at my mom's company, basically, and then truly, like, that started happening. I started this process, and then the pandemic hit, like,
Mhm.
right as I was, like, in the middle of it. So I had decided I wanted to make these friends and was in the process. I tell my friends all the time of, like, headhunting them, recruiting them, making them my friends. I was in the middle of that, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, "Oh, great.
Oh my
Now I'm not gonna be able
gosh.
to do this." So at the time, I was doing just, like, side stuff, like admin stuff. No,
Okay.
the stuff that no other people didn't wanna do at my mom's company. I was doing it for
Okay.
them.
Okay, but I didn't know if you were already in the kind of coaching space and then you just switched gears or switched specialties.
Yeah. I was interested in coaching, and I knew I wanted to do something along those lines. So I was kind of like I was getting certifications, but truly, in my brain, this was like a hobby, a fun thing, something I was going to do part-time. I
Mhm.
did not have any plans of it turning into what it did at all until the end of the year
Mm.
where I was like, "Oh, like, I could just do this."
That's so
So,
cool. I mean, that's kind of a lot of people's dream too, is to be
yeah.
find something that you're so passionate about and able to make that like your bread and butter. So, congrats on that.
Thank you. Thank you. It's evolved a
Um,
lot, but yeah.
yeah, I'm sure. I wanna talk about kind of the building of that at some point, but what you said about being in having social anxiety as an extrovert sticks out to me because I consider myself an extrovert,
Mhm.
but then there are times where, like, I don't know, I recharge by being by myself. So is that a mix, introvert, extrovert? And so kinda wanna talk a little bit more about that, and then also, can you give me some examples of social anxiety as an extrovert?
Yeah. No, I'm so
Okay.
glad you asked. So, introversion and extroversion, I think we also don't fully understand what those terms mean. And so, really, it's the way that you process stimulation. So, I'm pretty extroverted where I like being in like a group of people where we're all like playing games, having fun, but I do not like crowds. That is way too much for my little noggin. Like will go like if you will like nonverbal in that and it has nothing to do
Mm,
with social anxiety. I just don't like it. You know what I mean? It's just not for me. So the way you process stimulation, introverts actually get full of stimulation faster compared to extroverts do. So they have a I wanna say, like, lower capacity, if you will, for dopamine, like, they get full of dopamine faster than
okay.
extroverts do. So, I think that's helpful for everybody to understand because I think we associate a lot of, like, confidence with extroverts, but that's not true at all, and that's honestly what stopped me from realizing I had social anxiety as, like, emotionally as a mostly extroverted person, and you said
Mhm.
you're kind of in the middle, so if we think about it
I
as, like,
think
a
so, I don't
spectrum.
know, and maybe I'm wrong actually now that you defined it because I am happy quickly?
Mhm.
I'm happy quicker, but I
Yeah,
do have a large bucket.
yes. I maybe I'm not explaining this super, super well. So it is like extroverts take a while to get fuller, but it's because of that I can almost describe it as in, like, they have almost, like, puppy dog energy where, like, they're like, "Yes, like, let's have, like, all this energy, let's do all of these things, I wanna meet all of the people." That's
Uh-huh,
why they tend to get recharged by being around a bunch of humans, whereas introverts really prefer normally, like, one-on-one, deep, meaningful conversations because they get fuller faster that way. So it is
okay.
about how you recharge in a sense, but I think it's also like extroverts tend to like crave, if you will, more of that dopamine,
Mhm.
but I don't think it's that you like can't get happy as fast.
Okay. No,
Yeah.
that makes okay, so yeah, I do think I am a mix of both,
Yeah. I would
I
say
would
so.
say.
After
Um
listening to your podcast, I would say so. I would say so.
any other, any other, like, not assumptions or critiques, but any other, like, out loud thoughts?
No, I think, just noticing that about you, I think it's yeah, I just think, like, that energy and that, like, bounce to it, if you will, like,
Yeah.
is something that extroverts have. So there is a spectrum, and
Okay.
people tend to say they're like, "Oh, I'm an introverted extrovert." That's not really a fully thing, like, what they mean by
Okay.
that is that they're ambiverted, which is the middle ground between the 2. So, I tend to be, like, a little bit more on the extroverted side, but, like, mostly ambiverted, right?
Okay.
So, ambiverted are people that really, like, could recharge, if you will, either way. They're kind of like I said, like, the middle ground where they can be around a bunch of different people, but, like, maybe don't like all the crowds and, like, being around people all day, if you will,
Mhm.
right? Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I've never heard of ambiverted, so you've taught me something already. That's so interesting. So you growing up, do you have siblings?
I do. I
Okay, were
do.
you, like, very like, were you guys always kinda doing something together? And, like, I'm just trying to get a picture for, like, how you grew up and, like, your life too.
Oh
That's
my gosh,
okay.
I no, I love that, and people don't normally ask me about that. I love it. So,
Okay, good.
I have a younger brother. He's a year younger than me, but I have always looked, like, way younger, and he's always looked way older. So, we kinda grew up as, like, twins almost.
Okay.
So he's just a year younger than me, but he was also very protective. Yeah. So and then I my mom actually adopted my 2 older cousins once when I was she adopted one when I was 6 and the other one when I was 11, and there's a whole story behind
Mm,
that, but the short version is their dad died, and,
mm.
um, my mom fought for custody and, like, guardianship over them.
Oh my
So
gosh, what a
mhm.
saint.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Aw, that's
She's
so
amazing.
special.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel
That's
really
really cool.
lucky. She gave me the best gift in the world. She gave me my cousin, so
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
that's so sweet. Wow, I'm sure that's a really I'm sure a tough but beautiful story there, so thank you for sharing that. Okay, so do you feel like with your family, did you ever feel a sense of I'm just trying to think of people that I know in my life who are, like, very involved with their family, but maybe they don't do much things with other people, like, they kind of just
Mm.
stick to the people that they know, like, routine, why change why fix what's not broken kind of thing, like, did you find yourself there?
I actually found myself and I think this is why I am what I am and why I study what I study, but without getting, like, too because it's wanna protect my family's privacy, but without getting too
Of
deep
course.
into it, my family life at home was very emotionally volatile, and things were so intense all of the time. There was a lot of emotional abuse. And so for me, I grew up with, like, what some psychologists that have, like, studied this dynamic, they call, like, emotional loneliness. And it's where you have this,
Mm,
like, deep craving for connection and safety because you're not getting it with your caregivers, which is why I think I was so keen my entire life on feeling connection, but I coped with it in such a toxic way that is really common. Our culture kind of teaches us how to cope with it this way, and that's through perfectionism. So
mm.
I tried to be as perfect as I could be, say the right thing at the right time in the right way so that way I could be connected with other people because that's what I wanted so badly. Okay, I see your reaction. What are you thinking?
Are you talking to me? Are
It's
you
so
talking about
common.
me right now? Yeah. I've never heard that term. What was it? Emotional longing. I mean, I've heard that term, but not like
Yeah, emotional
in the way that you
loneliness.
loneliness,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, absolutely, I can identify with that. I don't think that I would've agreed if you had said that to me maybe 8 years ago, I probably would've been like, "No, not me," you know? But absolutely through 5, 6 years of therapy now, and just real my home life was, extremely chaotic. I did experience love, but not in the typical ways that one might. My love was very conditional. If I was a good girl and I did what I was supposed to do and,
Mm.
which then propelled me into being this people pleaser because if I did right and I was perfect and I everything was amazing and I distracted from anything bad going on, I would get that love and affection, verbal or, physical from my family. So,
Mm.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, and it's part of it's like the way like we were raised like that, like being in that kind of environment and learning how to love because that's where we learn how to love, right? Is through those
Yeah.
dynamics. And also our culture is obsessed and it's only gotten worse. Like, there's this thing called socially prescribed perfectionism, and it's the
Okay.
belief that others expect us to be perfect. And it's increased by 33% in recent decades, and it's only skyrocketing as social anxiety skyrockets. And it's really a way of trying to cope, right, with being like
Mhm.
flawed and being like, okay, if I'm perfect, if I always handle things right, oh my gosh, I mean, the hours I spent trying to be so self-aware so I could avoid any embarrassment. Like, let me learn all
Right.
the things about myself so I can, like, shut up, perfect it, and then people will
Oh
like
my
me, you
gosh, that
know?
has got to be, limiting.
Yeah, it was so limiting, so soul crushing. And you asked me earlier too, what does social anxiety look like in extroverts? So for me, it looked like this really cringy thing where I would go to people and I would trauma dump on them and overshare to try to make us best friends like instantly, right? It was so bad. It was so bad. But I would overshare. It was constantly like this graspy little, little little gremlin like,
Yeah.
please like me. And the entire time, like, trying to do it in, like, a perfect way and look flawless, it's absolutely exhausting and completely isolating.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Wow. That's deep.
Yeah. And if
I
anybody's
feel like
listening and is there right now, you are so not alone. I can't there's a reason why I've been full-time these 5 years, right? So many women are dealing with this. So if you were in that boat and you're like, "Oh my god, same," there's so many of us. There's so many of us.
okay. That's really good to know, and I think that there's probably just, like, different stages of all of that, of all the multiple
Mhm.
facets of the emotional loneliness or the social anxiety, whether you're an extrovert or introvert or ambivert. Like, I think that also, which all these titles I do feel like, make sense and they're appropriate, but I also do think that like our culture is so heavy about you have to be defined as something, right? So
Mhm.
if you're not trying to be perfect, like okay, well, you're an extrovert, so that's why you go out all the time or, like or you're an introvert, like, "Oh, my friend's an introvert, she won't wanna do that," and, like, I just feel like we also do label
Yeah.
everyone,
Yeah.
which
No, absolutely.
I don't know, probably can be a little unhealthy.
I think it can, especially when we're thinking, like, for example, like, if we get angry and we say something or we, like, kinda snap at somebody and then we're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not a kind person." It's like,
Mm,
"Hey, you had, like, a normal human moment. It doesn't have to mean that
hmm,
you're not this thing." Um, I tell my clients all the time that they need to imagine, like, a switchboard, and we just wanna turn up certain things of ourselves and down certain things of ourselves, right? Like, I'm not gonna be the same way with my grandma like I am with my best friend when we're, like, talking about sex or something. There's no way.
yeah,
There's no
yeah,
way, right? So I'm going to turn up certain parts of me. They're still me, but turn them
right,
up I'm with my friends, when I'm with other people than I am when I'm, on this podcast or with my grandma or with somebody else. It doesn't mean I'm not
yeah,
being authentic though.
okay. Oh, that's good to think about too, because I have been called many, many, many moons ago, I think I've been called, like oh gosh, a poser-ish, like, back in the day,
Mhm.
because I'm never gonna pretend to like something that someone does, but, like, I'm happy to be involved in it. Like, for example, I am not a sports fan, but, like, you wanna go to a sports game? Sure, I'll put on a jersey and I'll root for the team. I have no issue with that. I'm getting the overpriced nachos and the, strong beer, the cold beer, whatever. Like, I'm having fun. I'm not sitting here pretending to be the biggest fan of this sports team or something like that, but, and that's just about wanting to be involved and have fun, but I'm not trying to, put this impression out that I am something I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree
Mm,
1,000%. In my
that's
opinion, that's just
interesting.
like being an open person.
An
Just being
open person,
open.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, and I know we're here to talk about friends, which I have so much more to talk to you about, but quickly, do you feel like it directly reflects romantic relationships as well?
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. And what we talk about today too with, like, the science of friendship because that there is a thing. It's the same kind of stuff that we use in dating as well. So if somebody is dating right now, or even like no matter what relationship you're in, this is going to help clear a lot of it up. But with social anxiety, with everything we've talked about, and like that perfectionism definitely shows up in romantic relationships. I would even say, and to call myself out, like, especially in the past, I would, like, project that onto my partner because that was such a
Mhm.
close relationship that I almost, like, perfected or projected my perfectionism on to him, right? So, like, if he didn't do things perfectly, like, in my head, I wasn't being very kind to him about it either, just like I wasn't being very kind to myself. So, I think
Mm.
that shows up a bit more in our romantic relationships just because they tend to be our most intimate ones, our close ones, where some of that stuff, that heavier stuff kinda comes out.
Yeah, and you feel probably more comfortable to take it out on the people that are closest to you, even though that's still
Mhm.
not okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay, really quickly, we're gonna play a game, Wine or Fine, and then we're gonna get dive a little bit deeper into because I wanna know about the science of friendship.
Yeah.
That sounds, like, up here to me. Okay, so wine or fine? People pleasing.
Oh, wine.
Wine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Growing apart with your friends or becoming distant with age, wine or fine?
I would say fine. I would say
Okay.
fine, and we could talk about that too. We can talk
Okay,
about that too.
we can explore more.
Mhm.
You kind of already touched on this, but venting or actually, no, trauma dumping to your friends.
Oh my gosh, such a wine, and if you are somebody that does that, it's okay, but we can be aware. We can be
Yeah, and I
aware
think there's
now.
probably a difference between trauma dumping and then just having a good quality important conversation with your good friends. But if you catch yourself, like, going back to that same person with all the same quote unquote drama or issues and problems, like, it's probably time to seek, um, a coach or a life coach or a therapist, right?
Yeah. No,
Um,
absolutely.
venting to friends about friends in the same friend group, wine or fine?
This is such a tricky one, and so for the most part, I'm gonna say wine, and wine's like, no, right?
Yeah.
I got it? Okay,
Yeah,
just making sure. Yeah,
yeah.
I figured, but yeah, no, I would say wine for the most part.
Okay. Lending friends money.
This is also such a tricky topic. Okay, I would also say, like, it's pretty even, but I would say a bit more wine.
Okay. And then what about Bumble for friends? Wine or fine?
I'm gonna say I mean, not that I don't think I'm gonna say wine, and I'll give a caveat as to why. So,
Okay, wait, I
we'll
wanna hear why. That was the last one, so tell me.
yes, okay. So, I would say wine because I think a lot of times and I made this mistake up until I really started learning about, like, again, like, the science of how this all works, but a lot of people will think, "Oh, I need friends. I need to go meet new people." But the lack of, like, closeness in our lives for most of us is not because we don't know enough people. Like, I don't know about you, Paige, but, like, you've probably been a part of so many groups, like, with your jobs, with, like, the, like, groups or things you were a part of, like, in college or, um like, the networking groups, even if you've stayed like, I know you mentioned you stayed locally, like, I
Mhm.
know having a business, there's a bajillion networking groups, right? I'm meeting people all the time,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right? So, our
yeah.
lack of closeness problem, we already know enough people, and we know people that we've already had that spark of connection with that we've, like, met so many amazing potential best friends, truly. We just haven't done what I'm about to teach y'all to turn that person into a friend, right? So when I think Bumble BFF, ooh, I'll pause. So sorry. Okay.
It's okay.
I think Bumble BFF is in a way like almost like trying to quickly order a friend, like a DoorDash almost, like just like swiping and being like, oh, this could be a great friend. But
Mhm.
friendship is not made that way, and I think it's just being another way of, like, meeting people for people. Like, I've I do know there have been examples, though, where people have moved, and it's been helpful for that. Like, if you're looking to make a new friend close to you proximity-wise, like, I have heard success stories of it,
Mhm.
but I do think for the most part, it's people's way of, like, trying to, like, really stay in their comfort zone and
Mm,
not be vulnerable to ask the people that they have already met that would be amazing best friends to, like, reach out and then turn that person into a friend.
okay. I like that take. And it also makes me think about Bumble for Real for dating because I there's so many success stories in that, of course, too, but, like, what you're saying is, like, there are so many people or friends of friends or friends of friends of friends that we could be out
Mhm.
there meeting and
Yeah.
connecting, and I know that you're not here to talk about dating, but that
Yeah.
is just something for the listeners, for the whiners to think about too, like and a friend of mine once told me, she's like, "Online dating is so cool, we're meeting people that we would never ever meet in real life." Like, it's really taking, like, a gamble and a lot of our energy to do that when we could just be going to the places that we like to go or the groups that we like to
Mhm.
hang out and then, like, putting our time and effort into meeting a new person in those groups. So,
I love that.
I think that that kind of just r
Yeah.
puzzle pieces together for me in my
And
mind.
if I may too, it's
Yeah,
different with friends and dating because we have normalized the dating process, if you will, right? Like, if you go out with somebody and you like them, what do? You make a plan to see them next week. If you go out with a friend, is it, like, for most of the time, are you like, "Okay, when can I see you? Can I see you in a couple of days?" Like,
never.
normally, you're not doing that, right? So, I think it works for dating because we have these social scripts of, "Oh, we're gonna spend more time together as we keep deciding that we like each other and get to know each other," and I want that to be more normalized for friendships, and I do think in the next 5 years it will be because we have a lot of people that are feeling really lonely and not a lot of systems to help them really make friends. So, I do think it will become more popular, but it's not really our norms for right now.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's get into the science of friends or making friends.
Yeah.
Take me down the road.
Yes. Oh my gosh, my fave. Okay. So, if everybody can picture a triangle, and this comes from Shasta Nelson. She was, like, the OG researcher. There's been so many now, like, truly, it's such a hot topic, but when I started looking into this, y'all, there was, like, one person, and it was her. So, Shasta Nelson came up with this, and if we can all imagine, like, a triangle, and let's say there are layers to this triangle all the way up to the pinnacle. So there's a layer of acquaintances, a layer of, like, just, friends, a layer of your best friends, the people that you would include in, like, your bridesmaids tribe, and then at the very tippy top, your confidants, your closest relationships. And oftentimes, our partner is one of those people. So, how we move somebody, because we've moved everybody that we have at the very top, the pinnacle,
Mhm,
everybody that's ever gotten there has done it through these three things. There is no friendship that is an exception, no even, like, relationship that is an exception to this rule. Everybody has, like, gone through this. So how we move somebody from an acquaintance to a confidant are through these three things. So if we picture this triangle, the base of that are meaningful moments, moments where we feel really positive about an interaction with somebody, where we feel seen, understood, where we have fun, where it's playful, where we share a laugh. And this goes for any kind of relationship, but it takes 5 positive moments to outweigh the impact of one negative moment, which we'll get more into in a second. But so these meaningful moments are essential. They literally are the foundation of our triangle, right? So we
okay.
have that. And then we increase and move somebody from an acquaintance to a confidant by increasing consistency and increasing vulnerability. So if everybody can picture, like, the sides of the triangle, like, we move up through the sides through consistency and vulnerability. So, I was telling you earlier, the mistake I made was, like, trauma dumping on people. I would,
Yeah.
like, go out for coffee dates and be like, "Okay, this is how I'm gonna make this girl my best friend," like, 'cause best friends, clearly, we just know everything about each other, so let me tell
Yeah.
her my whole life story. And so, the reason why that didn't work is because I wasn't increasing our vulnerability over time, right? Incremental vulnerability is what we want to go for. Vulnerability at the end of the day, Paige, is just I see more of you and you see more of me. Every time we're together, we get to see more of each other, and some of that comes around, like, naturally. Like, if you go on a girls' trip, you get to see, like, the messy way that your friend, does her skincare or doesn't, if it's, like, one
Mhm.
of those nights and then goes to bed,
Yeah.
right? Like, that's vulnerable. Uh,
Yeah.
if you are going to your coworker's house for the first time, you're seeing the way they kick off their shoes, the way they choose to decorate their home. Like, that's vulnerable, right? So some of these things happen naturally, but we increase connection through vulnerability. And for any of the trauma dumpers out there, any of the oversharers like my past self, I want to say I do think, especially in today's world, it's good to lean on the side of oversharing because it does help, like, sharing that information with somebody does help them feel like they know us and feel like they're
Mm.
connected to us and therefore safe with us. So, I would lean on the side of that, but trauma dumping, where you're telling somebody about, like, traumatic events and things like that, that can actually make somebody feel really unsafe when they're with you the first
Okay.
time. Right? And not just because you're sharing a traumatic event, but literally because it kind of mimics, like, if you will, trauma in a way, because it feels like too much, too fast, too soon,
Right.
right? And so what I was doing is I would literally meet like a girl like in my sorority. This was in college. I'd meet like a girl in my sorority, I'd meet a girl somewhere and I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, let's go get coffee." And then I would tell her all the traumatic things that happened to me. And she would probably feel like, "Oh my gosh, I feel really weird," and not know why, right? And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
because it was too much too fast too soon. So we want to go for incremental vulnerability, and
Okay.
I do say, again, as, like, a measuring stick for the most part, I find that people are not sharing as much, like, they're almost, like, holding back a little bit, and what I wanna offer is, like, it's better to, like, overshoot a little bit as far as vulnerability goes, but when it
Okay.
comes to as, like, a measuring stick, when it comes to traumatic events. Let's hold that off for a while, okay? We can talk to our
Yeah.
other people about that, for sure. So, um, so incremental vulnerability, increasing that over time, and that just comes also through collecting those moments over time as you, like, get to build a relationship with somebody and you get to see them, be mad at their boss or get in a fight with their other
Mhm.
friend or, celebrate something, 'cause celebrating is vulnerability as well. So,
Yeah, it's probably
incremental.
like, it evens out too because if you're just coming here trauma dumping and I didn't even get a chance to say anything and now I feel weird and I don't wanna say anything, it's like you didn't really get to know anything about me, and so where are we in this, 50-50 relationship?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
And when I would do that, like, on over coffee dates and stuff, which, wow, being real vulnerable with y'all, telling you all about these details, but, uh
Thank you so much. It's important. I do feel like it lends to, your expertise and your background and, your knowledge, so I think you're doing fine. You're not trauma dumping, by the way.
Good. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Yeah, but when I was doing this, it would often sometimes just be they would feel like, "Oh my gosh, girl, that's a lot. So let's just talk about that thing." And you're right, I wouldn't get to know them. Or I would start oh my gosh, but I would start asking questions about, like, their whole life story because, again, at the time, that's what I thought, like, friendship was we know
Mhm.
everything about each other. Right? So I would start asking questions to them that they weren't very comfortable with telling some girl that they, like, had only spent
Right.
2 hours with at, like, a college welcome party, like, before, you know? So
Yeah.
it can make us feel really unsafe is my point, and I tend to lean on the side of oversharing. I do think most people are undershooting when it comes to connection, but as a measuring stick, well, let's just not go to the trauma part. Let's just leave that. So
Okay.
the other thing that we do to increase like a bond, a connection with somebody is through consistency. So we talked about it with dating earlier, right? So with
Mhm.
dating, our relationships, our romantic relationships tend to go a bit faster because we're like, oh, great. I really enjoyed hanging out with you. Let me see you in a few days. Let me see you next week. Let me see you, then maybe a couple weeks later, let me see you 3 times that week, right? So we're starting
Yeah.
to spend more time with somebody consistently. And so we consistency and how we increase it are through two kind of factors. So if we can imagine this one side of the triangle, it kind of breaks off into two. There's two components of it. And that's history and frequency. Because I bet there's somebody listening that's like, okay, Jewel, I hear that about consistency, but I have a best friend and I only talk to her like, every 4 months. And I feel really close to her. So I don't know about that. Well, do you have a lot of history with this person? Because my
Mm.
guess is you probably do. It's probably the friend that you've had since kindergarten, your college roommate, right? Somebody that you've already built up so much of that time and meaningful moments and moments of vulnerability with that we have this thing called emotional memory. And so you have an emotional memory bank of connection with them that you can just tap into, right? So you don't have to talk to them every 6 months. Well, I would say every 6 months, but, you don't have to talk to them every week to feel really connected to them because you already have such an overflowing bank of connection and memories with this person, right?
Hmm.
So, through history and then through frequency. So, frequency is typically why too in the past, before, like, work from home, why we became so close to our coworkers. 'Cause we see them every day. We're having a lot of time with
Yeah.
them. It's very frequent. So, one thing that I did to speed this up, because this is the number one thing people ask me about, they're like, "But how do you get more consistency to build these friendships if you are just so incredibly busy or if you're a new mom or something along those lines," right? And so, I did a couple of things. I created routines with my people. And y'all, it's vulnerable, but ask. You would be surprised, right? Most Americans are lonely. Like Gen Z, actually, 73% of Gen Zers are lonely. 73%. That's scary.
Yeah, I believe that because I think it's, like, so social media focused too, and, like, you might feel connected, like, immediately, like, immediate, satisfaction, but do you actually feel that connection?
Mhm. Yep. Yep. And and even before a global pandemic, we were all by ourselves, loneliness had been steadily increasing, linearly increasing, like almost a perfect
Mm.
line since the 1970s. So most people are lonely. It's vulnerable, but ask to have like a routine where you were like, okay, I we can have like a book club bi-weekly every week. We can go on a walk, like do a walking talk and do that every week. Like, offer routines. So doing that.
Okay.
I would, because I hate to. I'm a terrible texter. Um, I know you got to talk a lot with, my amazing virtual assistant, Hannah. I wouldn't get anywhere without her. I love her, but it's because I really do not like doing the logistical stuff back and forth. It's
Okay.
just not my favorite, so she
Draining.
manages
Yeah.
all of that, but I don't even
Yeah.
like doing it in my real like, my personal life, right? And it has nothing
Okay.
to do with my love for somebody, I'm just not a great texter. And so, what I would do, and part of it just came from, like, I don't wanna have to text you back and forth about plans. And I realize it's such a hack because that's also where a lot of people get really caught up in, like, drama about, like, "Oh, no, I haven't heard back from her in a few days, like, maybe she's not interested in being my friend." No.
Yeah.
Let's cut that shit out, right? Let's cut that out. And what you can do is when you are with that person, so you're at the coffee date, before you leave the coffee date, whip out your phone and be like, "I would love to hang out with you again. When is the next time you're available?" Put it on the
Wow.
calendar.
As
You don't
easy as
gotta do
that.
it's so easy, and if you're like me and you're like, "I hate that logistics of back and forth," you don't have to do it.
Yeah. No, that's so smart.
Yeah. So I did
That's a
that.
hot tip.
Yeah. I know, and again, it came from, like, me being like, "I just don't like this," but all of my clients and anybody that's, like, ever heard me say that on a podcast is like, "Oh my gosh, that's it's so simple." It's so simple, there's
Yeah.
nothing genius about it, but so helpful. Um, so through doing that, and then I would do things where I would be like, "Okay, can we go to, like, an all-day event kind of thing?" Something that we would all be interested in. Or when the pandemic hit, I decided I was like, "Okay, let's do COVID tests, and then let's go do, like, a staycation." None of it was crazy, right? None of it
Mhm.
was, like, super expensive. But giving myself, like, space to have, like, a weekend with them and get, like, a lot of time with them, like a staycation. And again, y'all, it's vulnerable, but you would be surprised at how many people will say yes, okay? I
Mhm.
asked 7 girls to go with me on this weekend trip, and at the time, I was really nervous about it, and I was like, "Well, we're not that close yet, I don't think they'll want to," and 6 of them said yes, okay? So, like,
Aw.
people are lonely, you're offering the best gift in the world by doing any of these things that I'm telling you, the best gift in the
Yeah.
world, connection. So doing that where we would have to spend a lot of time together, those are the things that I did, and, like, those girls are my confidants today, they are my best friends, I was in one of their weddings, it's been years later, and it's only
Mm.
our relationships have only, like, deepened, and truly, that's how I did it, those 3 things.
I mean, I'm kind of blown away, like, and I don't know if I should be. Like, I don't know if for some people this is gonna be so common sense, but I don't I would guess not.
Mhm.
I would guess not. I know so many people in my life. I mean, I've gone through some terribly hard moments um, with friends of mine, and we've come back from it. I've also gone through terrible times with friends, and we've not come back from it. And so just kind of, like, reflecting and thinking about what you've said is really it's just resonating, and I think it's really cool, and I had no idea there was a science for it.
Yeah.
And it's all things that are very if you break it apart, you know, the each act is, very attainable, very easy to do, but when you put it together, it might sound overwhelming, so maybe you just focus on those, like, those moments in time, like planning the coffee date, friend date for the next time rather than thinking about the trip, you know,
Mhm.
like, just one thing at a time
Yeah, no,
kinda thing.
absolutely, absolutely, and it's one thing too when people sometimes I'm glad you have that, honestly, reaction to it because most of the time when I describe this to people, I get a reaction of like, "Oh my gosh, that sounds like a lot," and that's fair, especially for women, we have so many things going on in our lives, right?
Mhm.
But connection is one of the things that changes the way we respond to stress. Our bodies respond so differently to stress when we're feeling connected and we have that in our lives compared to when we don't. Connection is energizing. There's no like exact study that absolutely says this, but I will say this any day of the week. I swear when I'm feeling connected or have like just talked to my girlfriends, I have so much more like mental clarity and like
Mm,
focus. Have a little bit more of a pep in my step, right? So
yeah.
I want to offer, like, it's worth the investment because we've been taught, right, that, like, health is, like, green juices and, Pilates, and it is in some ways, right? But our social health has such a big impact on our well-being, on our energy, on our life satisfaction, and so if anybody's hearing this right now and they're like, "Okay, I am in that boat where I'm listening to Jewel and I'm thinking, like, this is a lot," I wanna offer that overall, though, it's gonna make your life more enjoyable, and it's gonna make
Mhm.
you more energized, it's gonna help you work through things faster, and I think too, the gift of being seen by somebody, celebrated, supported by somebody, like, cannot the value of that cannot be understated, and why wouldn't
No,
you
it
want
cannot
to have
be.
that in your life? So
Oh my gosh, like, I mean, I'm sold. I am sold. A quick example, from my end is I know a lot of people who have had babies or marriages, maybe multiple marriages, bridal showers, baby showers, graduations, and I've never done anything of the sort. And last July, I did a live 100th episode podcast show, and I had no idea. I've never felt not supported in my friend group. I've always felt loved and lifted up, and like I didn't feel that I wasn't getting something or something was missing. And I had this 100th episode live show, and I had no idea what was in store for me. The emotional toll that it took on me from feeling the energy in the room and all of my, even like strangers, but also like my close friends and family, like how much time they took out of their day. They were checking on me throughout the process to do it. And like people were saying, like, just because you don't have a baby or you don't have a husband or a wedding, like we can celebrate you in so many other ways. And I mean, I was just absolutely like, I could almost cry just thinking about it now. Like it just meant so much to me. So I completely understand what you're saying. That connection is so important. It made me feel, I didn't know that I was missing it, but I guess I was because I had never felt this feeling of support before. So,
Mm.
yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that so, so much.
Yeah.
That's so
It was
beautiful.
it was, and I mean, I'm like, I all these people who have felt this, like, I've always loved to celebrate people in this way too, like with the baby showers and the weddings and stuff, and I'm like, I never knew where they stood or what they felt, and I know it's very different, but, the support of someone being there for you, gosh, it feels amazing. There's really nothing
Yeah.
like it. So, I have a couple of, situations that I wanna get your quick advice or, your 2 cents on.
Mhm.
Um, and it's common things that I've heard in friend groups. It's also potentially things that I've gone through in mine. So a big thing is friends at different stages. So maybe you have a lot of history with somebody, and maybe somebody does have now a family, a baby, a husband, a new group of, pre-K moms that they're friends with or something like that. And how do you kind of, as the person who is not that, maybe you're still single, or maybe you're still dating, or maybe you're working on a side hustle, like how do you find those commonalities? And I don't know, how would you recommend kind of navigating that?
Yeah. So, I do think when we have friends in different life stages, I think that's honestly somewhat of like an automatic thought that we have of, "Oh, but they're in a different stage than me," and it already like separates us from them, right? And connection is really overall like just this feeling of togetherness. And so I want to offer two things. One, especially like let's say like somebody is like the first mom of their friend group, right? I've had a
Mhm.
lot of clients that this has been their situation. Like they're the first mom, they're the first ones that have had kids. And I think there's like a craving to talk with your people, to have friends that are going through that thing that you were going through. So you also maybe want to talk with, you know, new moms as well. Or like if somebody's ever gone through grief, they know it's really helpful for most people to have somebody else in their lives that have gone through grief as well that they can relate to on those topics. So it is connective. But when it comes to friends that are in different life situations than us, I think we're kind of quick to think that and to be like, oh, they wouldn't get it. And what I want to offer is like, give them a shot, give them a try. I've coached so many clients on this, and I have so many examples of this exact story. This happened recently. So I had a client who was saying that to me, and I gave her a challenge of going back to that friend. So to kind of paint the picture, my client is very like career driven and oriented, doesn't want to have kids anytime soon. And her best friend that she grew up with just had children. And I got permission to share this story, by the way. But
Mhm.
um, her best friend that she grew up with just had kids. And she was like, okay, we're in completely different life stages. My client was getting promoted, her friend was having kids. And I was like, okay, but what is it that y'all have in common right now? Like, what is it? And she was like, okay, well, we have this history together. And I was like, okay, but what is it even about your circumstances? And my client was like, well, like our identities are completely different. Like I'm building this identity as like somebody who's like transitioning into like a leadership role, and my friend's identity is changing as a mom. And so she went and talked to her friend about that, went over to her friend's place and talked to her friend about that, and her friend cried and was like, I feel so seen, right?
Oh.
I feel so seen. I have so many stories just like that one. So, what I want to offer is that we think sometimes that we need people to be in the exact same situations as us, but we often don't to really be able to relate to them and to have a sense of togetherness with them. Also, sometimes, like, let's say you have friends that have kids and you don't have kids, sometimes it is more convenient for you to be able to be like, "Yeah, I can just come over for dinner, and we can put your kids in
Mhm.
the living room." Right?
Yeah.
So, like, you're able, like, to do that, like, somebody is able to not you specifically, but, like, somebody who's listening, may be able to do that because they don't have kids, right? So they're able to,
Mhm.
like, drop what they're doing. So, whereas, like, if that person also had kids, that may have been more of a barrier, right? So, when navigating things with people or with navigating different situations, I always like to just challenge everybody to look for, okay, but what do you have in common that's maybe, like, deeper, right, than just, like, the circumstance? They have kids, I don't. They're married, I'm not, right? They are doing XYZ at work, and I'm doing, ABC over here. Like, where do you have things in common? Because you do.
Mhm. I love that take, and I think that's totally fitting. I also saw that someone said, um, like, if you think that your friend who's nursing their baby at home, like, with sleepless nights doesn't want to hear about your single dating life, you're dead wrong.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
they do, like, don't feel like you always have to be talking about the baby or the nipples or the whatever, like, is going on with your friend's mom or the friend that's a new mom or even a multiple time mom, but, like, if you're thinking they don't wanna hear about your new relationship or your promotion at your job too, like, or your other friend or something like that, like, they do. So, I think it's just important to remember, like, exactly that you don't need to be in the same on the same path, like, basically convenience, like, it's really convenient when friendship is convenient, but
Mhm.
it's telling when you can still maintain a friendship and it's not convenient, right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I'll tell you what, like, I have a friend right now who's going through, like, a single, like, maybe some people would call it, like, a party phase, and I am not in
Mhm.
that phase right now, and I am
Okay.
so happy for my friend, like, watching my friend be, like, confident again and, like, enjoy herself is so fun and rewarding for me. I don't think either of us have ever even had that thought of, like, "Oh, we can't relate to each other," you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Good tidbits. Oh my gosh, this conversation went too fast, and I kind of had a feeling that it would. Can you give me your wine of the week, and then after the wine of the week, let the Whiners know where they can find you and kind of what, like, maybe a consultation or the first initial call would look like, and then also, what is the name of your podcast? I know I just threw 3 things at you.
No, you're good. The Socially Delightful Podcast is the name of my
Yes.
podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's on Apple and Spotify?
Yep, on all the places where podcasts
Okay.
exist. Yep,
Okay,
all the
awesome.
fun
So
stuff.
go ahead and tell us about the consultation and stuff, and then we can do the wine of the week.
Yeah, so, this is actually my last year, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, of doing one-on-one coaching, and so I specialize in working with women that have high functioning social anxiety, that want to become more charismatic leaders, that want to develop more meaningful friendships, really just, like, helping women become connected in their lives, become connectors, have those skills.
Mhm.
And so I work with people for a minimum of 6 months, and this is actually the last year that I'm doing that. There will be other stuff, but for right now, that's what I'm doing. My goal I have not talked about this anywhere yet, but my my
Only
goal
share what
is
you're
to
comfortable with.
yeah, it's very exciting. It's very, very
Okay.
exciting, very fresh, but my goal is to be able to offer social prescriptions. So, social prescriptions, it's something that's been going on in the UK, like social prescribing, and it's where people will, in addition to like anxiety, depression, meds, or like other treatment, they will give somebody a social prescription that really fits them. So, like art classes, nature walks, like giving people the medicine, if you will, of community.
Mhm.
And my ultimate goal is to bring that to the US because it's not here yet and it might take some time with the way our world is right now, but that's my goal. So That is
How
why I'm getting my
cool.
master's and doing all that. So, this will be the last year to do one-on-one coaching, which is absolutely crazy. But if you are interested in that, if you have any questions, I do a free consultation. I also do it because I've even had some people, which is so sweet, this happened a few times where people are like, "I know I wanna work with you, let's just do it." And I'm like, "That's great, I love that, like, that's so fun." But we're gonna have a consultation because I make sure everybody is, like, appropriate place for coaching because some people,
Mhm.
they're just at a place where therapy is where they need to be right now, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's completely okay. So,
Mm.
if you're interested or teetering the line, you can book a call with me, and we can talk about that. Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Very cool. And what's your social handle?
Yes, and you can find that anywhere at, Connection with Jewel. Jewel is spelled like a gem or like a rock. So, Connection with Jewel, all
Okay.
this everywhere. And my wine of the week is I feel like crap right now. Um, I do not feel well at all, if anybody can kind of hear it, in my voice, but I went to a conference this past weekend to speak at, a conference for colleges, so, like, to speak to a bunch of universities about connection, which is amazing, and I'm
Mhm.
so grateful. But I'm so dead today, and I think one of those kiddos got me sick because I, like, have this weird head thing going on and that
Oh,
sinus pressure where it
no.
just feels like your
Pressure.
nose is gonna explode, so that's my wine of the week.
I love that you said those kiddos and you're like,
I
30-ish.
know. I know. I gotta do it in my brain. I gotta do it in my
No, for
brain.
sure. But honestly, the flu or the virus or the what have you is going
Mhm.
around. Like,
Yeah.
I know it's gonna get me. I feel like I've, like, become on the brink of it a couple times where I've, like, woken up and, like, really had to blow my nose, but then I'm like, I take an immunity juice or my elderberry or something, and, like, it's not gonna get me. It's not gonna I
Yeah.
do think it will. Eventually,
I hope not. Cross my
eventually.
fingers for you.
Oh, thank you so much.
I'm,
Let's
like,
see, there's a lot
literally
going on.
yeah, it's a lot is going on, and I normally don't get sick either, but I'm also, like, sweating right now, just
Oh my
it's
god.
happening, it's absolutely happening, I've
No, no.
realized.
I hope you have a couple days of rest available for you.
Thank you, thank you. I think I will be able to tomorrow, so that'll be good.
I'm just picturing you feeling like absolute shit through the whole interview that we just did now.
I
You
love
didn't look
talking
it
to
or
with you, though.
sound it, so you did great.
Good.
So go take off your sweater, go take a hot shower.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for coming on and for your insights, and, I think that the Whiners are really gonna like this. I mean, I just know people in my life personally who I think will benefit from hearing some of the insights that you had and the tips and tricks, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, for being so, like, authentic and real. Like, I don't know if you've read any of your reviews recently, but Paige, your reviews just really reflect, like, my experience listening to your podcast, where people are saying, like, "Oh my gosh, like, I laugh out loud, I have fun, like, she's just so real." And so, thank you for doing that and for giving me the space to blab about my favorite thing in the world and probably, like, a little bit incoherently, you know? So, thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much, that's so nice of you. I think I probably have read every review because I'm always like, "Please leave a review," and I see when they come, but that's a good reminder to go back and really let it set in. Thank you for saying that, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're so loved. You're so loved.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, Jewel, thank you so much. We will talk soon, hopefully on your podcast, actually, coming up
Mhm.
soon. Whiners, love you guys, and we'll see you next Thursday. Bye.